Are you sure that you believe? The Bible tells us very plainly and very clearly in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." Whosoever believeth in the Son of God, whosoever believeth in Jesus Christ, should not perish, but have everlasting life. So I ask you this question. Do you believe? And how do you know that you believe? I want to share a story with you. A very godly man in my church, a deacon, had told me this story a while back, and I want to share this with you. There was a man who was known all around the world as the greatest tightrope walker in the world. And he thought, well, I've accomplished so much as a tightrope walker, but there's one thing that I think would just impress the entire world, and it would make me for sure the greatest tightrope walker in the world. So he said, I'm going to take a tightrope, I'm going to have it put all the way from Canada to the United States across Niagara Falls. And so the day came when this event was set up that this man was going to walk from one side of Niagara Falls to the other, from the U.S. to Canada. And all these people, crowds and crowds of people, came to watch this man do this amazing feat. So all these crowds came and were gathered, and he was standing on the U.S. side. They had cameras, they had videos, they had everything ready to show this man walk across on a tightrope across the Niagara Falls. So the cameras are on him, and on the other side they could see from the videos what he was saying to them on the U.S. side. And he says to all the people in the crowd, thousands and thousands of people, and he says to them, do you believe that I am able to walk from the U.S. side all the way to the Canadian side on this tightrope? Do you believe that I'm that good? And every single person in the crowd raised their hand and said, we believe that you can do it. So the man begins to walk, walks all the way across to the Canadian side. The crowds are cheering, they're going crazy. They're like, wow, you are the greatest tightrope walker that ever lived. And so the man says to the crowd, okay, if you believe that I'm the greatest, do you believe that I could walk across this tightrope pushing a wheelbarrow? Raise your hand if you believe that. And everybody in the crowd on both sides raised their hand. Not one person didn't have their hand up saying, we believe that you can tightrope walk all the way across pushing a wheelbarrow. So he got a wheelbarrow and he began to walk across this tightrope and got all the way to the other side pushing a wheelbarrow. And again, the crowds cheered, and they cheered him on, and they were so excited. They said, wow, you really are the greatest tightrope walker that ever lived. And then he said to them, he says, okay, do you believe, and raise your hand if you do, that I can walk all the way across this tightrope again, pushing the wheelbarrow with a 150-pound bag inside the wheelbarrow? Every person raised their hand on both sides and says, we believe that you're that good that you can do it. We really believe you can do it. So he gets this big bag, 150 pounds, sticks it inside the wheelbarrow, and walks the tightrope all the way to the other side. Now, he gets to the other side, and again, the crowd's going crazy. They're just cheering him on, saying, wow, you are the greatest tightrope walker that ever lived. And so then he says to them again, he says, do you believe that I'm the greatest tightrope walker? And they all said, yeah, we believe. And he says, do you believe that I can push this wheelbarrow across this tightrope to the other side with a person in there? And every single person raised their hand and said, we believe you can push that wheelbarrow across the tightrope from the U.S. to the Canadian side with a real person inside the wheelbarrow. And everybody's hand was up saying they believe. And then he said, who's getting in? And every single person's hand, the thousands of people on the Canadian side, the thousands of people on the U.S. side, they all put their hands down. Not one person was willing to get into the wheelbarrow as he pushed him across. Now they said they believed. They believed he was the greatest tightrope walker that ever lived, and he could walk across that tightrope. He could walk across it pushing a wheelbarrow. He could walk across it pushing a 150-pound bag. He could walk across it pushing a human in there, pushing a real person in the wheelbarrow. But when it came to the people believing enough that they were going to make a sacrifice, that they were going to step into the wheelbarrow, they didn't believe. They didn't believe. So the Bible is clear. And it says, if you believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, thou shalt be saved. But the question is, are you sure that you believe? The Bible tells us to make our election sure, to make sure that we are in the faith. And I see so many times, so many people say they believe. And I was even guilty of this myself, growing up in the church, thinking I was a Christian, thinking I believed, based on an intellectual thing, not a heart knowledge. But when it comes to stepping into the game, when it comes to stepping in and making sacrifices for the Lord, when it comes into putting yourself at risk for the Lord Jesus Christ, do you really believe? Do you?